Only in dark the light, only in dying life. Speak to us, God, your life-giving word.
Welcome, friends. I'm Mother Sylvia, and I'm here with my husband, Donnell, who's going to tell us another story for the 40 days. We heard about this story yesterday about the boy, David, who would one day be king. So take some deep breaths, sing along with the song, get ready to hear a story.
Only in silence the word, only in dark the light, only in dying life. Speak to us, God, your life-giving word. Only in silence the word, only in dark the light, only in dying life. Speak to us, God, your life-giving word.
All right, Donnell, will you tell us this story?
A child brings down a giant. David needed that Spirit of God in the hard days that came upon Israel. While David was still very young, the Philistines declared another war on the Israelites. This time, the Philistines had a secret weapon. His name was Goliath, and he was a giant. Goliath was as big as a house and as strong as an elephant. He stood before the frightened Israelites and shouted, "Choose a man to come and fight me. If I win, you will be our slaves. If your man wins, we will be your slaves." The Israelites crouched low in terror. No one volunteered. Now, David was at home still tending the sheep when Goliath challenged Israel. But three of his older brothers were in Israel's army, and David used to go to the front lines to bring them food. David arrived in the army camp just as the battle was beginning. He ran to the battle lines looking for his brothers. David heard Goliath come out again and issue his challenge to the frightened Israelite soldiers. David said, "I will fight the Philistine." King Saul heard David and said, "You cannot go and fight the Philistine. You are only a boy, and Goliath is a man. You have never fought. He has been a warrior all his life." David said, "I'm a boy, but I'm also a shepherd. Sometimes lions and bears come to steal my sheep. I have rescued my sheep from the mouths of wild animals, and I have fought with lions and bears. I am not afraid to fight Goliath." Well, King Saul made David put on his own royal armor, and over David's armor, Saul buckled his own sword. But when David tried to walk, he found that he could not move. David was used to so much weight, was not used to so much weight. And so he took off the armor and the sword and went all alone to meet Goliath. David picked up his shepherd's staff and began to walk toward the giant. On his way, he stooped down and picked up 5 smooth stones from the riverbed. He put the stones in his shepherd's pouch and he walked on. Goliath saw a small boy coming toward him. The boy looked friendly and kind. He did not look like a warrior. He had no sword or spear. He had no servants. Goliath was angry and asked why the Israelites refused to take him seriously. "Do you think I am a dog you can beat off with sticks?" Goliath shouted. Well, David answered, "You have the strength of your sword and your spear, but I have the strength of God's name. Today, God will deliver you into my hands. Today, all will know that it is God who gives the victory." And then David ran toward Goliath. And as he ran, David reached into his pouch and took out a stone, and he put the rock in his sling and swung the sling round and round. And then he let the sling go, and the stone flew through the air, and the stone hit Goliath on the forehead, and the giant fell down dead. Well, the Philistines saw that their champion was dead. They turned and ran, and the Israelites ran after him, shouting their war cry all the way. Israel won the battle, and David went to live in the house of the king.
Wow, that's another amazing story. My favorite part is when David says to the giant, "You have the strength of your sword and your spear, but I have the strength of God's name." Each one of us was given the strength of God's name when we were anointed in baptism. And I wonder what hard or courageous thing you've had to do that you couldn't have done by yourself, but you could do with the strength of God's name. Or maybe there's a hard or courageous thing that you're being called to do now or in the future. Talk about that with a friend or with your family, and we'll see you again.